All right, here I go.
Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our public meeting this evening on the 27th of September. So tonight, there's not a huge group here. So we're going to handle questions through the chat this evening, and we'll all just be monitoring the chat to make sure that we keep up with those. Are there any additional agenda items that anybody would like to bring forward? All right, then we will start moving right along. Okay, so our first item on the agenda tonight is an overview of the Sycamore neighborhood overlay open house we had earlier this month. So
do you want to let everybody know that we're recording?
I expect
Sure.
I got the notification when they joined.
Okay.
And I have a little presentation quickly about it. Right. Oh, sorry, it failed to share. Let me try again. Oh, it won't let me share at all. All right. So then we'll just quickly go over it. So we had an open house on September 5th, and we invited leaders from City Council, as well as environmental leaders and other community leaders with the Planning and Zoning. So for those of you that aren't aware, what's happening is that the city is rewriting the planning and zoning code for the first time in several decades. And the Sycamore overlay is this special area within the borders of Collister that is specifically impacted by this. So what we've been doing is organizing to advocate for some of the protections that are already within the overlay. Oh, it looks like, all right, now I can screen share. Great. Sorry about that, but it wouldn't let me. So what's happening is the rewrite. They're trying to balance the housing shortage with the need, as well as try to simplify the code and balance it with infill. So the proposed rewrite does maintain the overlay, but it upzones the area. So it eliminates the large lot protections that reinforce the agricultural protections that the overlay allows this area. So we had a little meet and greet. President Pro Tem Lisa Sanchez was there. Katie Fight, a District 5 candidate, and District 3 candidate Greg McMillan came, along with multiple people from the Planning and Zoning Rewrite Committee. And about 30 people from the overlay attend and meet with them on a small individual group basis, express their concerns, as well as the love of the area and how it still does fit into the within the city of Boise. We had great response, we had great feedback, and so we will be planning future events in the next few weeks and hoping that we get those city council people, including the mayor, who were not able to attend that evening. That's just a little synopsis about that. Does anybody have any questions regarding the overlay, what we're doing, or anything else? All right. I'm not sure if we have Lisa Sanchez with us tonight. Are you here yet? Okay. Then how about we just switch some agenda items really quickly. I'm gonna just jump to the Collister Drive study then next, the update that I got from ACHD regarding that. And then once Lisa joins us, we'll be able to then get to her agenda item and speak with her. Oh, pardon me 1 second. I just got an email from Lisa and I want to make sure that her Zoom link is working. So I apologize, everyone. I'm still just going to move along because she'll need to be logged in anyway, and that'll, I'm sure, just take her a minute. So all right, so over the summer, ACHD started outreach with the community and meetings with the neighborhood association and the neighborhood regarding updates to Collister Drive. So I reached out to Brooke Green, our contact at ACHD regarding this project, and she gave me a little just quick update about what's happening. So we did get approved by the ACHD commission to go ahead. So the next few months from October to December are going to be, they're going to come back with technical proposals and details about what they're thinking about doing. And then in December, they will have another public input meeting to go over the different proposals, and they will do another outreach campaign. I know they did a lot of door hangers and door knocking. And then in the spring, summer of 2022, they will hold a second public input meeting based on the feedback from that concept they bring over the winter. And then in the summer of 22, they will present it for approval. So based on feedback from her, this project will be going ahead. And this, obviously the timeline is subject to change. So here is some of the feedback that she gave. Let's see. Back up. So 87% of people thought that we definitely needed improvements. We had 11 for needed nothing and 3 undecided. So solutions that they thought would be a good fit, a lot of highlights, sidewalks, bike lanes, solutions that wouldn't be a good fit, stop signs, stop lights, and speed bumps. So this was the survey results that they had. 112 responses were for sidewalks, 25 for bike lanes, 14 leave as is, but 121 did not want it to be left as is. So I think based on that as well, they'll be going ahead. And just a few comments that they had heard back from the stakeholders in the area. So we'll keep you updated with what's going on with this. We do have the updates on our Collister website, and in the chat, we'll be dropping in a little PDF with all the relevant links from tonight, because there is a lot of information this evening and there's no way you can possibly all absorb it. So We want to make sure you have everything relevant that you need. Any comments, questions about the Collister Drive study?
Hillary, did you note that Lisa has arrived here?
Perfect. That's what I assumed once I emailed her back and I heard a ding during that she had gotten here. So let's move on to City Council President Pro Tem Lisa Sanchez.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. So was there anything in particular that you wanted me to speak about tonight, folks?
I mean, I think we'd like to hear maybe some of the proposals or goals that you have going forward with City Council. And obviously, we have a lot going on in the neighborhood, specifically in regards to the proposed IFS site on State Street, the upcoming urban renewal district, and those types of projects.
Yeah. Okay, so I will go ahead and just start and make my pitch for continuing to be your representative for our neighborhood. As some of you may recall from my visit, can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
It's a little quiet, but we can hear you.
All right, let me see if I can increase the volume a little bit. All right, I'll do my best to amplify. How about that? Okay, so the last 4 years, I have chosen to focus on housing, specifically as it relates to renters. As you may recall, I am the only renter that is serving on council at this time. And the numbers are showing that in our city, we're getting to the point where half of our residents are going to be renters. And we do need representation for those folks. So I began my work with bringing forward a piece of legislation, the rental application fee ordinance. We had a lot of folks bringing to our attention that they were being exploited at the application level. So that meant that you had property managers and landlords who were collecting applications for rental units with no guarantee to the prospective renter that they would get a unit or at least be refunded their application fees if they didn't get a unit. And so as you can imagine, people who are unscrupulous, they made more money by harvesting those application fees than they did by renting a unit. So we had to move forward with that application fee ordinance. And it's proven to be successful, but we have to be mindful of what happens at the Idaho State Legislature. It does affect the work that we do as a municipality. And so passing that ordinance in 2019 was not enough. We also had to protect it. And so in 2021, I led the charge to protect our ordinance from being removed through HB 45, which would have removed any sort of regulation on property owners, such as, I don't know, having a short-term rental. I know that there are some neighborhoods that are not comfortable with short-term rentals having no regulations at all at this point. And had HB 45 passed in 2021, it would have made it impossible for us to have any sort of limitation on folks having to be residing at the property where they are having an Airbnb. So that's part of the work that I do, is not just the ordinances that we work on to protect our residents, but also being mindful of what's happening at the Idaho State Legislature to ensure that the regulations that we pass stay standing. And it's the kind of work that I would like to continue to do. Now that we have districts, as you may know, we are running by district for the first time in the city of Boise. So this time we've got districts 1, 3, and 5 running for election. You have 2 incumbents in myself and Holli Woodings running for District 5. TJThomson has chosen not to run for reelection in District 1. And it does change, I believe, the way that we're going to approach this work. As I may have shared with you when I visited with you last, the approach I've taken to this work has been mostly about issues, not necessarily focused on a particular neighborhood. But I feel that this district presents an opportunity. I'm so sorry. It proposes an opportunity for us to do our work in a deeper way. And so I very much appreciated the opportunity to tour the neighborhood and to see the elements of your neighborhood and why you're so protective of it. It's beautiful. And we don't have spots like that throughout the city. And so I completely understand why you're proud of that and you want to share that with folks. I look forward to having a deeper dive with more neighborhoods in District 3 and advocating for what the neighbors want. As I shared with you when we last spoke, a lot of what I take into consideration when I'm doing this work is what I learned the last time I campaigned in 2017. And one of the messages that was very clear to me was that folks are not in the dark about how quickly our city is growing. They fully are aware of that. But folks want to be aware of what is the plan? What are we going to be doing to prepare for this rapid growth that we're experiencing? And how do you, as residents of this city, how do you give your input? And that has been the guiding star for me in terms of my votes. And it's something I want to do a deeper dive on. How can we ensure that you are at the decision-making table? So as you know, you have somebody from your neighborhood who has been a part of the zoning update advisory committee. And we have been speaking about what is it that neighborhood associations can be doing to be a part of this, because this is the moment right now that advisory committee is meeting, and it's going to be meeting for 2 years. This fall is the first year concluded. I can't believe that a year has already gone by, but there's going to be another year of work with this advisory committee. And so now is the time to be giving the input. The city is counting on people being overwhelmed by the information. As those of you who are engaged know, some of this work is very, very boring and it's very technical. And what happens is people's eyes glaze over. And unless you are truly committed to being involved in the process, it can be very easy to disengage. Now is not the time to do that. You got to fight through that. Now is the time to fill out surveys. Now is the time to be engaged when they have those online meetings, when the public is welcome to give input and ask questions. So please continue to do that. Please fill out those surveys. And if those surveys are too onerous, if they're too technical, if they're not accessible enough, please give that feedback as well. This is the moment where we're going to create the city that we want, that we can all enjoy and live in the way that we want. Don't turn away from it now. Please use your influence on your neighbors to make sure that they are giving the input to the city now. And like I said, if those surveys that you are seeing, if you can't make heads or tails of them, if they're too technical, please give that feedback as well. We need folks to be able to understand this jargon, that if that's not your world, if planning and zoning is not your world, these terms don't mean anything to us. Please feel free to give that feedback as well. And that's also part of the work that I've done at the council, has been to ask that the city make their work more accessible and understandable. Many of us did not go to school to be urban planners. We are not engineers, most of us. We have a right to understand what is this work. We know it's complicated work, but I tip my hat to my sister and Girl Scouting, Brooke Green. Brooke has done such a great job with ACHD in making this work accessible. It sounds like she's done a great job of connecting with the neighborhood to get the information that ACHD needs in order to provide the environment that the community wants.
Do you want
And I want us to do more of that at the city as well. I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if there was a question.
Do you want popcorn was the question.
I'm good, maybe later.
I did get a question in the chat for you. But we can wait to the end to handle all of those if you prefer.
Okay, great. But basically, what I want to continue to do on council is to be that advocate for folks that the work that the city does be done in tandem with the community. I mean, we have seen what happens when decisions are made for you that you're not involved in. It causes a lot of anxiety. We saw what happened with Mergerdio. There's a reason we don't have a brand new library. I still would like us to have a library at some point, but it really needs to move forward in tandem with the community to make sure that the community understands why we're doing it the way we're doing it, because they're a part of it. I am very low rent. I don't have a bunch of money to pay a fancy person to make a newsletter for me or any of that stuff. So what I have done is I've used my social media a lot. I Facebook Live a lot of the events that I go to. I take pictures of the people that I'm meeting with so that you know how this work happens. I think prior to my joining council, I don't think people thought to take pictures at a meeting. It might seem kind of boring and weird, but it's also informative. It lets people know this is how an ordinance comes together. And I did that for the better part of a year in 2019 so folks could understand. And that is something that I will continue to advocate for, is we need City Hall not to be a mystery to the members of our community. All right, so let's see. Okay, so one of the questions says that, I think it's Isabel has found those surveys don't have a legend for the grade. Don't know if 10 is good or bad. They aren't technical, they are misleading. Okay. One moment, please. And this is, you're recording this, right, Hillary?
Yep.
Can I get this from you after?
Yeah, we also post them on our website as well. So I'll make
Perfect.
sure that you get a copy.
Okay. Application fees, did you meet with any professional rental agencies to understand their business, model, their costs, their responsible property owners? We did, and we actually had landlords testify in favor of the application fee ordinance. You know, it was getting so bad, we had to put something in place, and we're still tweaking it. That's the wonderful thing about these ordinances, is they're living documents. And, you know, it's not one and done and then we move on. We want to see how the ordinance is working. And if we have to make adjustments, we will do that. So for example, right now, we're trying to make it so that folks know who to go to report a violation or questions about whether the ordinance is being complied with. So originally we had the Boise Police Department is where people would report violations. We're going to be refining it so that it's actually code enforcement who folks would go to. So housing. An issue regarding housing, specifically low-income housing. How can City Council ensure there is housing for low-income residents when property for developers is not accessible? Example, property. Okay. Can that person just ask the question? I'm having a little trouble.
Absolutely.
Okay, Leslie?
I'm working on it. Sorry, unmuted. So I work for a company that does build low income housing. and they can't find anything in Boise. So they are identifying properties in Nampa, Caldwell area, and they can get them at a quarter of the price that they would pay for something in Boise. So they would love to build in Boise and provide low-income housing in Boise, but they can't afford it. So how do we fix that?
Well, we have been looking to do our housing land trust. We are really wanting the state to fund their land trust. It would be great if they use some of those millions of dollars in surplus to fund our land trust. But you know, the city also, the way we're approaching it and have been, is a housing bonus ordinance. And right now, I think we've only had 2 builders take us up on it. So they're putting a pause on it to see how we can tweak it and make it more enticing to developers. But right now, that is the approach that they're taking. And I think they're wanting to find ways for us to use our land trust to acquire property so that it will be more affordable for us to have builders make that affordable housing. And none of it is happening as fast as we would like it to. It's unfortunate that the situation with Mergerdio happened, because I think it's that urgency that was spurring people on. But as much as we want things to move quickly, we have to be strategic about the way we move forward. But right now, from what I understand, we're wanting to use the city's land trust so that we can acquire property to partner with those builders so that we can get that affordable housing. We are in desperate need of it. Okay, can you guys feel free to go ahead and just ask? Because that's
All right, so Kim is next then. Kim Tucker, you are next on the dock to ask the question.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks so much. My husband might join in on this too. So one of the questions that we have is a lot of affordable housing, single family dwellings are being bought up by investment firms. Some statistics say 15 to 25%, depends on the area, of single family dwellings are being purchased by these big corporate investments firms. And I think that is having a big impact also on affordability of houses. Is there anything that planning and zoning is doing to negate that, to make it so that really single family homes can be purchased by people who are not just per se families, because I know that's not inclusive language, but for first time buyers and people who can actually be able to afford them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, I honestly do not know if there's anything that prevents a property owner from being able to sell to somebody like that and put a caveat. The approach that I have taken, and it's like I said, it's not a fancy approach. And one of the things we always have to avoid is, you know, we live in a state that is very much anti-regulation. They don't want any sort of regulation on property owners. And so, you know, quite honestly, I think part of the reason we were able to kill HB 45 this year is because we had legislators from outside of Boise trying to rent while they were in session, and they ran into the same scammers and the same issues that our average everyday renters are experiencing here in Boise. And that helped us kill that bill because they had their own experience with that. Now, what I have been doing is I have been talking about my own personal experience as a renter. The only reason that I have been able to be a member of the Boise City Council is because my landlord chooses not to charge me full market rate rent. If she did, I wouldn't be able to be on the Boise City Council. So at some point, it does require a sense of community. It requires folks to make these decisions. And I know that's not what we want to hear because we don't think people would do that, but there are people in our community who are making decisions that are not just about profit, that they are about preserving the character of our community. I don't know at this point if there's anything that planning and zoning can do, but I do know that this message has been delivered loud and clear. Um, it's something to investigate, and I will follow up with planning and zoning and let them know that this is a question that this neighborhood association has. Is there any limitations on how we can preserve the limited housing stock that we have to ensure that we have folks able to access it rather than a business, rather than a development company that is buying up all these houses and turning them into rentals.
Thank you.
And Torres, you are next to ask your question.
Hi, I wanted to thank you for taking the time to speak with us tonight. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I am. To your quick point about now is the time to be active and to reach out and to participate. My question is that it feels like the goalposts have been moving lately. Margodio Park, it went, yes, we are. No, we're not. We're going to do something modified. No, we're not. The Shelter Better Task Force, when it was first formed, it seemed to be branded as a citywide, if not regional, task force to discuss homelessness as a whole in our community. Quickly became apparent it was going to become a neighborhood thing. And then it became something without much teeth and without, in my opinion, much authority to do much recommendation. And so what is your recommendation to residents? Do you call the mayor's office? What is the most powerful way to be heard when the goalposts shift?
I have used every tool in my toolbox when I want to be heard. So when I haven't been heard by my colleagues and the people in leadership, I work outside of that building. I build partnerships with other legislators. So probably one of the people that I work with most frequently is Representative John Gannon from District 17. I've worked with community partners. So when I kept hearing about this issue with the rental application fees, I found somebody who was an unlikely face of housing insecurity. And it was a former neighbor of mine, Mary Kemp, who unfortunately doesn't live in our state anymore. It became too expensive. But she's not the usual face of housing instability. She's a pretty lady, degree, lobbyist for the American Cancer Society. Her husband was working on his graduate degree to be a counselor. That's not usually who you see held up as an example of somebody who is going to be pushed out of their housing. And finding people like that who are willing to go public, to be interviewed by a newspaper reporter and talk about their private business, it's difficult. It's difficult to be that open and that vulnerable, but she was willing to do that. She and her husband were willing to do that. And it was compelling. And it put a face to this issue. And again, a face that we don't normally see. Normally you see the most dramatic example of that, right? You'll see a single mother living in her car with a couple of kids. You don't see somebody who is educated and has a professional job struggling with housing. And so those are the tools that I use to let my my organization know that we were very serious about needing this type of legislation. So I would say absolutely write letters, put it in writing, email. You can schedule a meeting with the mayor, just the way you invited me to speak with y'all tonight. You are welcome to do that with the mayor as well. And I know she schedules listening sessions throughout the year. But it does help if you stay engaged, if you become consistent about these issues. because you start to build a relationship and people start to remember your name and associate you with a particular issue. But it is super important to stay engaged throughout. I know we are busy. We have so many things going on in our lives, and it's difficult to do that. And that's why it's great if it's not just one person. Have a group of you do that. Look what the folks who were protective about the space over in Southwest Boise were able to do. They were able to force the city to take a pause and to actually have a deeper look at how we treat property that is donated to the city and what sorts of restrictions are placed on those donations. It turns out there's an inconsistency. Some have deed restrictions, some do not. And so because those people spoke up, they were united in their voice, they're actually going to be serving a greater cause in forcing the city to be more consistent about how it handles these donations of land.
All right, and then looks like we have a last question from Coda Hound.
Well, it's probably beyond the scope of a neighborhood association or city council, but I did write to our legislators complaining about property taxes. The District 16 ones were very responsive and considerate in their replies, but I got a reply from one of them who said, well, would it help if we made it 12 payments instead of 2? And I thought they clearly don't understand the question. And it is so frustrating dealing with a legislature that seems more concerned about my genitals than anything else. And it's just very frustrating. My house was considered very affordable when I bought it in '93. And in fact, it was on the very low end of housing. But now the property taxes are horrendous. A house near me sold, I think, for $1.5 million. And I'm wondering what that was on Catalpa. And I'm wondering what that's going to do to my taxes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would agree with you, Oda. It is very frustrating when we have day-to-day issues that we as residents need our legislators to be concerned with, rather than those, I don't know what we would call those, life philosophy issues that should actually be left to the individual. All I can say is, please don't give up. Please continue to write, call, email, encourage other people in your neighborhood to do the same. And if there's anything I've learned over the last 4 years, people relate to other people. A lot of these decisions, a lot of these policies, they're very cold, but we all know that the impact they have is very emotional for us. It's a real impact. And what I have found is that stories are compelling. When you are writing to your legislators, explain to them, what does this mean to have your property tax increased to such a level? How does that translate into your daily life? Is it affecting your ability to purchase medications that you might need? Is it affecting your ability to buy food that's healthy? Is it forcing you to make choices between whether you pay a certain bill versus another? I think when we breathe life into these situations, I think it's helpful. And like I said, make friends with your local reporter. Reach out to the folks who cover the Idaho legislature. Reach out to the reporters who cover Boise City Council. I know for myself, when I was working on that piece of legislation, I found that the reporters were really happy to cover that story because they're renters. They were feeling the consequences of not having any type of regulation on those application fees. So at the end of the day, we are all people, and we need to relate to each other. And so when I've tried to advocate for my position at City Hall, for example, the parking ordinance, it was a parking ordinance that was made a little more strict. And I found that to be unusual or a strange decision to make at this time, when we have people who are becoming homeless for the very first time in their lives. And their response to this is to move into their vehicles. And it's very painful to realize that that's what's happening to some of our residents, but it is true. And I understand that. When I lost my home to foreclosure, I remember for a minute thinking, can I live in my car for a minute? And it's hard to admit that, but it comes from a sense of independence. It comes from a place of wanting to be able to take care of yourself and not impose on other people. And so that's why I voted against us tightening up that ordinance. I just didn't think it was the right time for that. I found that it lacked compassion. And so that's what I'm trying to bring to this work is a sense of compassion, but it really does help to have those stories from real people. And I know it's hard. It's hard to be honest and vulnerable about your situation, especially if you're suffering. But if you think about it in terms of serving the greater good, that's what I did when I ran for office 4 years ago. I shared really embarrassing things about myself, like losing my home to foreclosure, because I wanted people to know that there would be somebody at the dais who knew their struggle and who could relate to it. And that's what I hope to continue doing if you give me another 2 years.
Any final questions? All right. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us and engaging with all of us this evening. We appreciate your time and good luck in the elections.
Thank you so much, Hillary. Thank you so much for all your questions. And Hillary, I'd love to follow up
Perfect.
later.
Absolutely. I'll make sure you get the recordings and no problem.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, we have Claire Fenton with an update about the traffic box wraps. Also in the chat, I'm going to drop a PDF file. There's a lot of links for tonight, including a survey link for the traffic box wraps to get some theme ideas. And it'll have some other information for contact stuff for some of the presentations that you'll still see tonight. Other than that, Claire, please take the stage.
Have to remember to unmute myself. Okay, so hi everyone. Yeah, these traffic box wraps we are able to do through a grant from the city that we applied for a year ago, and we have goodness, 5 boxes I think it is that we're wrapping. Most of them are along State Street and one at the Dog Bone roundabout. And as Hillary mentioned, we just sent out a survey. The purpose of the survey is to get community feedback on the type of themes you would like seen on these traffic boxes. So when you respond, it asks you, you know, on a scale of from low to high, high to low, whether you like, I think, what are there 4 or 5 categories?
5 categories on it.
Yeah.
Try to pull it up quickly while you're doing this. And
just so you know, we won't select one category for all of the boxes. We want your feedback on the types of categories you like so that they can be spread amongst the different boxes. And some will be more appropriate probably for State Street and others more appropriate for the Dog Bone roundabout. So Carl Leclerc at the city is going to want this information back before the end of October. What's our cutoff on this survey, Hillary?
We're gonna cut it off. We'll send an announcement, but I'm thinking probably around the second-ish week of October, because then we can compile everything and do our that we need to with that information.
So that sounds great. And so then we get this information to Carl, and then he puts out a call to artists, and then he has some themes, some information to be able to share with them. Now, we will have 2 people from our neighborhood sitting on the committee that is going to take this process through to its completion. But ultimately, this is city driven, and they are making the final decisions on everything. But of course, they want our feedback. Any questions?
No. Anybody?
I imagine that the design creation phase and then going into the manufacturing phase, etc., it'll be next summer before we see these boxes wrapped. That's my guess.
All right, wonderful. I personally look forward to this project. I love the traffic box wraps. So any other comments? I see there's some issues with the link I put in. I'll see if I can't share that in a different way. All right, moving on next. We're going to have the shelter task force recap and some next steps about moving forward with what that's going to look like. All right, so if you would like to contact myself or Doug with anything specifically about the task force, the IFS, and the presentations going forward, please feel free to reach out. That being said, we have had a ton of outreach from the community already. So we are moving based on the feedback that we have heard. So if you have anything additional or feel like it's not being represented, please shoot us an email. So I am just assuming these next steps. Sorry, my dog's scratching in the background. Although we have no confirmation on this, I fully expect IFS to submit their conditional use permit for this site. They will be required to resubmit their application. That means there will be another public meeting required, a community public meeting as per the conditional use permit requirements. As of today, there's been nothing submitted on their behalf, and depending on when they do submit, there'll be a few week period before the planning and zoning hearing, and after that, most likely whatever is decided will be appealed, and it will head to city council for the final determination, and that again will be a multi-week process. Esther, I may have you jump in, but I got this from you, so thank you for providing this to me the other night, just so we're on the same page about what the conditional use permit is and what it allows. So it is a procedure which is used to review compliance with the comprehensive plan, availability of services, compatibility, and possible adverse impacts on neighboring properties. It is currently, the proposed IFS site is currently zoned C2D, which is general commercial, and they will be allowed the conditional use to use it as a shelter. So that is where that details for what the conditional use permit actually is. And then it has specific requirements, and here are the requirements from Cody Riddle, Planning and Zoning. So the location must be compatible with other general uses in the neighborhood. The proposed use will not place an undue burden on transportation and other public facilities in the vicinity. The site is large enough to accommodate the proposed use in all yards, open spaces, pathways, walls, fences, parking, loading, landscaping, and other such features required. The proposed use, if it complies with all conditions imposed, will not adversely affect other properties of the vicinity, and the proposed use is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. So based off of our feedback and our neighborhood vote in the spring, how will we as the neighborhood association proceed on behalf of the neighborhood? So we'll work closely with the Veterans Park Neighborhood Association to create complementary meetings and proposals for the planning and zoning hearing, and then ultimately city council. In this presentation, we will share the results of the neighborhood survey, which we have been over multiple times in multiple meetings. Planning and zoning is very cut and dry. It either meets criteria with them or it does not meet criteria with them, and anything else from their perspective is somewhat extraneous. So we will focus on the CUP criteria and making and creating an argument about how the IFS site is not compatible with the criteria from the previous slide. And we encourage you all to contact your city council and the planning and zoning regarding the permit and your concerns and your feelings on the matter. And I also would say, try to also focus on that criteria, because planning and zoning, again, it either fits or it doesn't fit. And there's not much wiggle room for them in that regard. So here is the contact of the representatives. If you all can't open that PDF, which I think people are having issues with, I'll send it out in an email. And that way you can have it, because I have all of this here. It's a lot to write down. I appreciate that. Please note that Lisa Sanchez and Holli Woodings are both up for election, and they may not be on the city council by the time this goes before the city council. And TJThomson is not running, so District 1 will have a new candidate. So this representative list is subject to change, but please engage with them now. I wouldn't suggest engaging with planning and zoning yet, as we have no conditional use permit submitted. There is nothing to reference specifically. And part of the way they organize feedback is through the conditional use, the number that they assign once a permit is submitted. So once we know that is submitted, we will absolutely make sure the neighborhood is aware of that, emailing our website and social media to keep updated with everything in that regard. So are there any questions about IFS, what we're doing going forward with it? Any concerns? I know it's a big thing. Esther, yes, please, Esther.
Hillary, I just want to make sure I didn't see anything about the meeting. So if IFS is resubmitting the application, they would have to go through the process again, which means they would have to have another neighborhood meeting.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. They absolutely have another neighborhood meeting.
So I guess what I would say to all is, if you hear of the neighborhood meeting, usually shortly thereafter, the neighborhood meeting is when they submit for any development that's under conditional use. They usually, after that meeting, they usually submit their application to P&Z or the planning department.
Okay, thank you for that additional information. Anyone else?
There's a question asking if we need email addresses to send that information out.
Yeah, I just said you guys can direct message me, and I'll just put together a quick little group email after this with all of those. So in the chat, when you type, you see to everyone, you can just pick me, Hillary Takahashi, and then you should be able to just send them directly to me. Or if you don't mind people see your email, then you can put it in the group, whatever you are most comfortable with. And then I believe we've got one more little thing. Let me see on the agenda. We will be doing the Scarecrow Contest again. Jamie Lou has agreed to spearhead that, but she is not with us this evening because she's taking a much deserved break. Oh, yes, Rich, I see your hand up. I apologize.
Thank you, Hillary. I apologize. I joined late, so if you covered this earlier, but on the shelter better task force that you were on, did IFS show any indication at all that they might be willing to modify their plan and lower the number of people that they're trying to serve? Specifically, maybe, I would drop my opposition if they centered on families with children and got rid of the 100 single adults, men and women, that are not in programs, is the way I heard her explain that during the meetings I attended. And I'm just wondering if you saw any crack in their path forward.
No, they will not be separating the emergency aspect of the shelter from the family and medically fragile aspect of the shelter. It has made clear on many levels, from an IFS through the city to an extent, that a multi-site option will not be pursued in that regard, mostly because of the additional funding requirements and overhead financial requirements of that, and using additional funds they may have for that would mean that they do not have those funds for permanent supportive housing options. So I would not hold my breath that they are going to separate that. I will say, on the city council, Elaine Clegg was very amenable to a multi-site solution, was very supportive of that option. So she is, as of I can gauge based on the city council work sessions I have watched, that is your greatest ally in that regard.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so Scarecrow Contest, yes, Jamie Lou is going to be doing it this year. As soon as she gets back from vacation, she will follow up with those details for us. And then I've got two additional quick little odds and ends. I know that we have been curious about other candidates in the neighborhood for District 3. So I did receive an invitation from one of those candidates today, and I wanted to share that with you all. And then I also received some information from TJThomson regarding dog licensing. So we're having a little meet and greet. Well, we are not. Greg McMillan for Boise is October 5th, 5 to 6:30 at Catalpa Park. So I encourage you all to go and engage with the candidates so we can all make the best decision we feel is right for us and our community. And I think it's really great that candidates have been reaching out. So far, I know there's another candidate, Maria, and I'm blanking on the fourth candidate. I apologize. I have not heard from either of their campaigns as of yet. So if they do reach out, we will happily pass along any information they give us and engagement opportunities they have. And then lastly, dog licensing in Boise. Yes, your dog is supposed to be licensed. So they are redoing the licensing structure. TJThomson has actually spearheaded this. And once I email out the little PDF from tonight, it will have all of these links on it. And I guess the license rate in the city of Boise is about 18%, and their goal is to get it to 30%. And once TJ steps in, Clegg will be taking over and spearheading this project. And then one last reminder is that we have elections coming up in December. So if you've ever thought you might want to volunteer or work with the neighborhood association on anything, please reach out. I'm not really sure who from the current neighborhood association is running again. We haven't really discussing that yet, but feel free to reach out if you are interested, and participating in any form. Is there any additional items? All right, then,
I make a motion to adjourn.
yep. All in favor? Oh, I got one from Isabel Bruce. Info on sidewalks in regards to what? Do you want to pop on real quick?
Hi, how they're progressing, what the thoughts are, what the plans are?
Or call?
Yeah,
I believe they're going forward with them.
any idea when?
Yeah, so that will be, did you miss the first part of the meeting?
I think I did, yes.
Okay,
So
okay, we did the whole thing about it. No problem at all. We will have some detailed information and proposals coming up in December with another public input meeting. After that, they will do another feedback session on those proposals, come back with something more finalized in the spring, and then approve it in the summer of 2022 for my quick rundown of what that is.
great, thank you.
You are welcome. Anyone else? Okay, so Leslie, you want to make that motion one more time?
Yeah, I motion to adjourn.
Any second?
Second.
All right. Any opposition? Okay. Motion passes. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.